Welcome to the Poke It podcast with me, Nicola Cairncross, and my co-host, Pete Jenkins. In the show, we'll be getting deeply interested in everything and everyone, including business and entrepreneurship, investing, crypto, great films, books and sci-fi, served up with great food and wine, and a little bit of gamification and the odd guest thrown in for good measure. You can join in the conversation anytime at the Poke It podcast private group on Facebook. Now let's see what we're going to be poking at today, shall we? Welcome everyone, and we do have two viewers, probably me and you, but never mind, on our mobiles. Welcome everyone to Poke It Podcast. You're here with Nicola Cairncross and Pete Jenkins, and today we're going to be talking about alternative investments. But first, we're going to talk about what we've been up to, work-wise and other.
Work-wise and other. So, I've been getting busier and busier every day as my conference comes along. So I've now got headline sponsors for 4 out of the 5 days, which is great.
Yeah. Well done.
And a few other sponsors, and requests to speak keep coming in slightly faster than I can reply to people.
Well, so what's the difference in a headline sponsor and the other sponsors then?
So it's good to have a lead sponsor, I think, someone who's paying a lot more, for one thing.
Yeah.
And for instance, on our marketing, the headline sponsor literally appears as the headline.
Right.
And then other sponsors appear further down. They get slightly different benefits, but headline sponsor guarantees you a speaking slot, for instance.
Okay.
So, I don't normally like to give speaking slots to sponsors because they don't necessarily allocate someone who's any good at speaking. Yeah,
yes.
It's much more a commercial decision. So you have to pay through the nose for that privilege, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've seen some good ones in my time. I remember there was one chap who spoke in Australia, and he came all the way from America, and his company was sponsoring it, and he was fantastic. So I suppose, but generally speaking, I suppose they could come along and just push their own agenda rather than adding value.
Yeah. Good companies will send someone who's a really good speaker.
Yes.
Yeah, because it makes sense that's how you would maximize what you can out of the conference. Yeah.
Yeah.
Complete makes sense. The other thing that's filling my time is I decided to video interview every speaker, every sponsor.
I think that's a fantastic idea.
Yes, but it's quite time consuming. Organizing it, setting it up, then editing it and so on. So my diary is filling up with short little meetings. And this week I've got less time than normal because it's half term. So I spent the day with my daughter and my niece and nephew on Tuesday. We played Penguinopoly.
Penguinopoly?
Yes.
I suppose you're interested in games generally, aren't you? So you are you analysing them while you're trying to beat the other penguins?
Yes, indeed. Also, I'm not a huge fan of Monopoly as a game because it makes people sort of... It's not a collaborative game, shall we say. You end up potentially not liking the people you're playing with.
Ah, okay. You want to try Cashflow? Rich Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, has got a game called Cashflow 101, and he's got a kids version that teaches kids about how money works. And it starts out as a competitive game, but you swiftly find out that you win quicker if you collaborate.
Oh, there you go. See, I like that.
Yeah, it's really good.
I did end up merging businesses with my nephew in order to keep going because my sister was wiping the floor with us.
So how many? Oh, it sounds like quite a few of you were playing then.
It was me, my sister, my nephew.
I wouldn't go into too much detail. You'll have the police banging the door.
Well, there was 5 people, five people, including 3 kids. There you go. So.
Yeah, fair enough. 2 households. I suppose you're okay. Yeah. Because of course we're all labouring under the worry that Christmas might be cancelled this year in the UK. It's getting more and more bonkers, isn't it? The lockdown. Yeah.
Well, I mean, was it today or yesterday? France and Germany have gone back to official full-on lockdowns.
I know. And Wales, and you can't buy sanitary products in Wales because, of course, they make it more easy to catch COVID.
But really? Okay.
Yes, it's crazy. I tell you, they've actually swathed off whole shelves of the supermarkets in Wales that they don't believe are selling things that are essential supplies, blankets and sanitary products amongst them. I know.
The weather's getting colder. I feel like blankets are potentially essential.
Well, of course they are, but it's just, I mean, whoever gave that order needs taking out and, I don't know, locking up somewhere because they're obviously off their heads. Don't get me started too soon. What else have you been up to?
I've just come off teaching for a couple of hours. Really enjoying doing that all online with my students. And what else? I've actually had quite a few inquiries for interesting projects to work on in the past.
Oh, cool.
So there's been quite a lot of thinking about whether it fits, because they're never exactly what you do, are they?
No, they never are, and they're never exactly what you want to do either.
But with two of the main ones that aren't quite a good fit, I've managed to steer them to the bit I really enjoy delivering. So we'll see if they go.
And of course, the big news of the week is Pete has had his new cleaner.
Thanks for the recommendation on that one.
Yes, we are sharing a cleaner.
She started on Monday, and I think she thinks I live in chaos because I had about 6 calls between me and my other half during the time she was here.
Was that just a complete accident, or did you just forget she was coming?
I know they were all pre-planned. She only had the one slot left.
I know. So they're in short supply around here, good cleaners. But she's very thorough, isn't she? She
is, yeah. In fact, she didn't even manage to finish before she ran out of time. And I thought my flat wasn't that big.
I know. It's really quite astonishing. She took 5 hours on us, and she still only got halfway down the hallway. Now we've got someone trying to
sell us something.
Yes,
in the chat,
which is a bit rubbish, isn't it? Really, whatever your name is, Zatowski.
Zatowski.
That sounds rather Greek, doesn't it? It's a shame that you're going to have to go because I don't know how to get rid of them.
Well, that's fine. We'll do that later.
Okay.
What have you been up to then?
Well, I don't know what to say really. I've had. We organised last week. We went to my sister's, and because her partner goes playing football, she said, "Let's make this a regular thing where we go, to each other's houses for supper on a Monday night." Mm-hmm. And then that followed a very long that occasioned a very long conversation with my daughter Phoebe about what constitutes supper versus dinner, because obviously we've been watching The Crown, so we went through this whole long thing of posh people have supper early evening and they don't dress up and they don't sit at the table necessarily, but you can eat supper sitting at a table. But it's an informal dinner where you don't dress up and the food's more. Anyway, so it was very funny because she completely doesn't get any of that stuff at all. Although watching The Crown, she's a bit more clued up on it. And then so we decided that they would come to us this week. So we invited my other sister, and then she invited her daughter, and then my other sister, the first one, put some comments about it in the family chat, which then meant that we felt we had to invite a few more people in case they felt left out.
And so now you've got to do it socially distanced.
Well, no, because we're all in some bubbles with each other. But the point was that Phoebe and I then cooked a massive chili con carne with a vegetarian alternative. Well, I've got to say Phoebe did that, to be honest, and she did the shopping. I paid. And then she spent all afternoon cooking, and then only one sister turned up because the other one had completely forgotten about it and hadn't told her kids. So
now you've got loads of food left over.
We've got a lot of chili con carne, in various places. But the worst thing of it was that my sister who did turn up is the one that we ended up having quite tense discussions with about COVID, because she only ever gets her news from the BBC and The Guardian. And she doesn't really understand that there is a whole massive uprising going on about the fact that most people don't believe what they're being told on the BBC and in The Guardian. And so she, that was last week, and we actually hadn't seen her for a long time because she's very anxious about everything. Mm-hmm. And so apparently I make her more anxious by talking about stuff like financial stuff and things like that. And so anyway, when we went to her last week, I said, look, let's not talk about any of that because I'd rather just see you and not talk about it. But she kept bringing up the topic. So then we ended up having a bit of a 10-minute sort of discussion about it, but it was all right. It was under control.
Well, you can keep it down for 10 minutes. It's not going to destroy a relationship, hopefully.
Well, this week she turned up and pretty much immediately started talking about it. So I really did my absolute best to say, look, let's not talk about this. But anyway, so she did. And then I ended up giving her my views. And then we ended up having a nice dinner and sitting watching, what's his name? The bloke who goes adventuring and goes off and visits people who live in the wild. The blonde chap. The Explorer. Come on, you can do it. Anyway,
I don't watch enough TV.
Well, it doesn't matter anyway. The point is, it's a very nice program, and we sat and watched it together. And she went home, and everything was fine. And then I got a funny little message the next morning talking about my intransigent views. And I thought, oh, for God's sake, why are my views intransigent and yours aren't? And so I just got exasperated, and we ended up having a little exchange. And I don't think we're talking to each other again now.
So now you've got a bit more time on your hands.
Yeah, but you know the thing is, it's I'm not telling you this about to do anything, but it's the very fact that we are going through something that is dividing the country, it's dividing families even, that people can't listen to other people's views without getting upset and anxious and having cognitive dissonance going on. And I just think it's really bloody sad. And then when I see about the arts industry and the theatre industry and the restaurant industry and the hospitality industry and all these people this time last year had no idea this was about to be unleashed on them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this time last year, our world was completely different. And I think like everyone else, I'm waiting for it to go back to normal.
It's going to be a while yet.
Well, I know that, but should it be a while yet or shouldn't it? And I'm still open to the idea that we do need lockdowns. I just want someone to stop lying and give us the direct figures. And I think if they did that, everybody would be a lot happier, but they keep changing the goalposts. So, for example, I saw something yesterday that said that there haven't been any deaths from influenza in this country since week 16. If you actually look at the Office of National Statistics chart, no influenza deaths since week 16.
Which kind of shows you that lockdown works.
No, it kind of shows you that they are not counting the influenza deaths. They're putting them in the COVID.
Well, not necessarily.
Go on then.
Because actually, because it doesn't spread as easily, influenza, compared to COVID,
yeah, but there would be
have more effect.
There would be some influenza deaths if you were correct, wouldn't there? There are zero.
But if you had the flu, you wouldn't want to go to hospital at the moment because of all the people with COVID. So you might die at home and not be counted.
Well, home deaths have gone up dramatically, so you could be right there.
But they could be the flu. There you go.
They could be, yes, they could. Anyway, what I think the point I'm trying to make is that until we get some straight figures that people could actually trust, there is going to be this cognitive dissonance, you know, splitting people up. I just think it's really a silly way to go about it. If I was a leader, I'd be looking for cold, hard numbers.
But you know what? It is a topic that gets to people. One of the talks at my conference on the Health and Wellness Day is called Redesigning Coronavirus Metrics Using Infinite Gamification, which is basically the speaker is saying that the public health teams are distributing the wrong data about COVID.
They are, yes.
So the talk is about how to use gamification to explain how public health officials could design a more effective data distribution so that it actually impacts the right things.
I'd like to see that, because that's the one thing, because I've always had a really strong sense of fairness and justice, and this just all doesn't feel fair at the moment. It doesn't. And how is anyone supposed to make good decisions and work together to make what we're all going through better if we can't trust the numbers?
There you go.
Yeah.
Very good. Come trust in gamification to do it better. Well,
you know, computers are very good, but only if they're not ancient old spreadsheets at the cost of 12 billion. You must have laughed when you saw that number for an ancient old spreadsheet. I mean, how hilarious is that?
And spreadsheets have a limit to the number of lines of data you can hold, so that was guaranteed to break.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, we're starting to attract some. If I haven't just put everyone off, we've got Ali Mapletoft looking, whose partner Charlie is in our money discussion group. Yes.
Well, I mean, that is today's topic. I'm always thinking, why don't we get on with that?
Yeah, it's very nice.
I wanted to ask why you thought it was a good topic for this week, because I had my suspicions.
Well, yes.
And to set the scene about alternative finance, why do people actually look at it?
Let's go back a bit further. Let's go back a bit to what we were taught about investing and what we knew and what we understood from sort of children or young people? What was your sort of investing background?
Ooh, where did mine start? Mine started with my dad giving me pocket money based on how well I did in my weekly school report.
Okay.
Okay. And the first thing I learned was that if I deliberately had a bad week, although I wouldn't earn any money that week, he would put up the price of what I could earn if I had good grades again.
Okay, so an adjustable bonus.
Yeah, well, I was playing the market, wasn't I? I was, what's the word? Affecting how the market looks at it. Yeah. So then I'd have a good week again, and I'd get twice as much money.
Oh, you're very naughty, Pete. You were gamifying your dad.
I only see this in hindsight, but I knew roughly what I was doing at the time.
Yeah. So did you used to get pocket money because I gave my kids pocket money based on they got an amount for just being themselves and an amount for if they helped with the chores and were good. When I was the first memory I have of money actually is when we went to decimalisation and my 2 and 6 a week turned into 12.5p, which felt like a swizz, I must confess.
Yeah, I think mine was all results based, certainly for the first few years.
Yeah. Okay. And what did you do with it? Were you a saver child, or were you a spend it all as soon as you got it child?
I went through phases. Sometimes I would spend it on sweets, generally.
Yeah, sweets were good.
I wasn't particularly good at saving up for something.
No.
And then I did go through a phase of opening loads and loads of building society accounts that came with free gifts. So I ended up with, like, I don't know, 12 different bank accounts of building society accounts.
Gamifying the savings system now.
And I think I've still got one of those somewhere with a fiver in, which probably with cumulative interest could easily have £5.20 in it by now.
Yeah, I was going to say the amount of interest they pay. So did you, when you got to sort of teenage years, did you get any, and what did your parents used to tell you about saving and investing?
Well, I watched my dad go bankrupt, so I would say I tended to discount what he
well, that's interesting,
told me. So I learned about cash flow handling and making sure you have enough money for what you're actually spending.
See, I wasn't taught any of that at all, in spite of the fact my mother was a raging entrepreneur and she used to buy up old properties, and we moved every 18 months. So she would buy up an old wreck, we'd all move into it and live, as the building went on around us. And then as soon as it was pristine and done, she would sell it at a profit and we'd move into the next old wreck, which was her way of moving up financially. And funnily enough, she ended up owning half of the property that became my hotel in the future, which I didn't realise was ever going to happen. But so I was, at the same time, I remember never having any money for clothes. There was never any spare money for stuff like that. But they did used to smoke and drink whiskey. So
you can't smoke whiskey, can you?
Sorry? I didn't catch that, sorry.
I said you can't smoke whiskey, can you? But
so looking back, I remember feeling very poor all the time because there was, I had one pair of shoes per winter and my friends all had trainers and shoes and,
So all the money had to go into the property, basically. Yeah,
exactly. So, and I definitely think that boom and bust, it was boom and bust. So there'd be money around when she just sold one, but then it would go straight into the next one. So there was never any boom where we enjoyed the benefits of her labours. And looking back on it, I did take on quite a lot of that boom and bust attitude for a long time. And I certainly never knew how to save. And I didn't. And then when I did get to the stage, I remember when I was about 18 or 19, sitting with, well, it can't have been spreadsheets. It must have been graph paper in those days, trying to work out what, if I put into a pension, what I'd be worth when I was 50, and being so discouraged because, of course, I didn't know about the power of compounding at all. And in fact, I only realised about the power of compounding when I was writing The Money Gym, and it really sunk in. So what was that? I was in my mid-late 30s when I was finding out about how money really works. So
that's interesting. So in my early 20s, I was basically post-university. I came out with big student debt and I'd got used to the idea of debt. So I kept just borrowing more, refinancing and so on and so forth. And that gave me a good lifestyle until I'd reached reached my credit limits on everything, and I couldn't move and swap things around anymore.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I ended up in a job where I learned to be a financial advisor. So I was selling good financial advice, but while not taking my own.
Oh, that's terrible, isn't it? No, you need to backtrack a little bit, because I thought,
Okay.
I thought, no offense or anything, but you are old enough to have gone to college at a time when you didn't have to pay for it yourself, weren't you?
No, there you go. It was part grant, part student loan.
Wow.
Younger than maybe the grey beard said.
Yeah, but I thought it was only this year or last year that it turned over, when everyone had to pay for their own courses.
A grant paid the student fees, but a student loan gave you money to live on and invest in computers and stuff.
Okay, and so you didn't live at home then?
No, I went to Portsmouth for my university.
Oh, okay. Something I didn't know about you, Pete. How amazing. So when you were at college, when we're at college, we're not good with money. And then when you came out, you were selling stuff. And so did you ever look at the rich people you were selling financial products to and think, how did they get here? Or how?
No, do you know what? I wasn't selling to rich people. I was selling to the products I was selling were life insurance, critical illness cover, pensions, that sort of thing. And it was to people who wanted to look after their life when they retire, or look after their loved ones if something happened to them. That was the key element. I also did mortgages as well. It was across the board. So I was looking at their assets, but only from generally speaking, the people I was working with didn't have much money and needed to do as much as possible with it.
So how did you get to the point where you suddenly started, A, having a surplus where you might think, well, what can I do with this? And B, being aware of the kinds of investments that you wanted to go into?
Well, the key thing for me was, when I started in the financial services industry, I was doing a lot in pensions. I started off with a job in a pensions call center for an insurance company. And of course you end up with a pension, quite a nice one. It wasn't a final salary scheme, but it was still had a nice allocation rate. So you start learning about the terminology and things. And then you start looking at compounding and what it's going to do. And then you've got to choose what funds it's going to go into, and you can swap that around a few times a year. So it starts being on your radar. And for me, that started when I was about 22, 23.
Mm-hmm.
How about choosing that? What about
so
you?
The boom and bust thing has been a real thing right up until my late 30s. So, I'd get jobs and work at them. Well, the main problem was that I'm an entrepreneur, born and through, but died. And I cannot stick a job for longer than 18 months. I'd go in, I'd impress the hell out of everyone, my energy and my organizational skills, and I'd make new systems, and I'd improve everything. And then I'd get bored and I couldn't stick to my own systems, and I'd leave or get kicked out. And so when I went to art college, I did all sorts of things, tried different industries. I thought I just hadn't found the right industry, to be honest, but actually it was because I was congenitally incapable of working in an office for any length of time. It felt like prison, and I do remember crying at lunchtimes at some of my jobs because I was so bored. And so the finances were a similar pattern, really. I'd build up some cash and even buy properties. I mean, we bought our first property, my friend and my best friend and I, in Worthing in Westbourne Road, Westbourne Gardens, I think it was. Anyway, we bought it for £27,000 when we were about 18 or 19, which was back in the must have been late 70s, early 80s, because music TV, MTV had just started. Oh, yeah. So, we had a house, we let off rooms to help offset the costs. And then my friend, who was actually a hairdresser and earning very well, and I wasn't earning very well, went our separate ways. And it turned out she was the one with the money smarts. So, I was really going from a situation where I had absolutely no money at all to earning well, but knowing that it wasn't going to last. So, and I really hadn't seen the point of saving, because you're only saving now to spend later, I thought.
Yeah.
So why not spend now? And if you can manage the debt, as you say, then, I think I was still paying at the age of 35 for a hi-fi I bought when I was 17. Because I just didn't understand about revolving compound interest working against you as well as for you.
Yeah.
But as soon as I started getting it about compound interest, that's when I started trying to start saving to invest. And funnily enough, when just after Steve died, I went to Greece, as you know, to live out there for a little while. And the week before I went, a pension matured. I didn't feel old enough for a pension to mature at all. But the fact that I'd only put in, literally, I can't have paid into it for more than a year or two back when I was 19. But the fact that it turned into 27 grand was astonishing to me. And even more astonishing was that the government took 8 grand of it back in tax, even though I'd paid into it out of post-tax income. So I'm starting to get a bit more aware of all this stuff now. And that's how I started the Money Gym, was I was just trying to find out what everybody else seemed to know about money that I didn't. And it's such a complex topic. It's not just about saving, investing, earning. It's about self-esteem. And, and also, even then, I still, for another 5 or 7 years or so, kept putting money back into my business when I should have been taking it out. And we talked
that's my biggest sin.
Sorry, say again?
That's my biggest sin as well.
Yes, and we touched on that last week, didn't we?
Well, you look at your own business and you think about rates of return. You think, well, if I invest in me, I'm pretty much guaranteed a better return, aren't I? Than
the 2,
than
5,
a pension
7%.
or something.
Yeah. And then when I started meeting property investors, this was a real game changer. When I started meeting property investors who wouldn't get out of bed for less than 10% per annum return, 100% return on their investment when you take into account capital appreciation and rental income. And then I started knowing, because I did grade 3 CSE maths at school, that was as far as I got, because nobody had managed to make maths sexy until I met the property investors, and then it suddenly got very sexy.
Worth working out then, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you're working out your own money, aren't you, and what it could grow to. So when you were in business, how good were you at running the business money? Sounds like you're pretty good from the things you've said in the past.
Well, yeah, I think more that I learned quickly.
Okay.
Well, that's a very empty bank balance this week, and we've got to pay the bills.
So how, Ali's saying, I'm interested to see how tax is going to work in the DeFi world. Yeah, Ali's partner's very interested in the alternative world of finance as coming up and through the cryptocurrency sort of space. Got to say, Ali, Charlie's tried, but he's not getting through to me yet on it, just because I totally don't understand how it works. But anyway, we're going ahead of ourselves there. So
we'll answer that one later.
Yeah. How did you? What was your first investment? What kind of investments have you had? What kind of investments do you like?
Let's see. First investment would have been that pension, I reckon, through work.
And you're still waiting for that, yeah?
Yeah. I'm not old enough yet to take it. Thank you very much. But they did a proper top up. It was like put 7% of your money in, and they'll put in like 14 or 15 or something. It was quite
really powerful.
Well, it was a pensions company. They kind of had to lead by example, didn't they?
Yeah.
So that was the first one, and that ticks along, and I've been putting money in every month ever since. That's the only thing that's continued, I think, even when I was really, really broke for a few years running a business. Lottery tickets, shall we count those?
No, they're not. It's not investment. I think there's some ridiculous statistic that says you've got more chance of an aeroplane dropping on your head than you have of winning the lottery.
I was tricked. I bought a lottery. When the lottery started in the UK, I bought a ticket. I won a tenner every week for the first 3 weeks. I was like, this is definitely the way to go, isn't it?
Do you think they paid everybody a tenner a week?
I don't know, but it was then 2 years before I won anything else.
Wow, they got you hooked. What about premium bonds? Have you ever had any premium bonds?
I actually, do you know what? I have £100 of premium bonds somewhere. I had an inheritance, very small inheritance once of £1,000, which I put in premium bonds while I worked out what to do with it, because I didn't like the idea of paying tax. So if you do win, you don't pay tax.
Oh, because it's a winning, not an investment.
Yeah, and I did win 50 quid. There you go. So, and then later on, when I really needed money, I sold 900 of the premium bonds back and kept 100 just for like sentimental reasons, really, just in case. Maybe there's £1 million win out there, but the odds of that are infinitesimal these days.
Yeah.
I was looking at that the other day, because obviously it's a potential place to put your money, but the rate of return is appalling. So
yeah, absolutely.
No.
Yeah, and then after your premium bonds and your pension, what was your next investment?
Probably my next investment was one of those they talk about when was actually paying down the most expensive debts.
Mm.
Yeah, because when you look at the rates of return, you're like, well, I could get 4% interest over here, or save 25% on this hi-fi, or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely bought a big TV on interest on credit once, and glasses, holidays. Who knows? There was tons of stuff.
Well, we all did it.
Yeah.
And in fact, we're encouraged to do it. You see adverts all the time for it.
I quite like the stuff where you can snowball. So you put the minimum in terms of repayments to the ones which are cheapest, and then massively overpay the one with the highest interest rate.
Yeah.
And what I liked about that was how fast you could make a difference, even on a small amount of money.
That's quite sophisticated thinking. The fact that you'd worked out that investment works on the opposite side as well.
Well, that was one of the things we were trained on as a financial advisor. So the best advice is not always just to invest; it's potentially to pay down the debt, depending on your outlook on life.
Yes.
What you're doing with it. It's like quite often if you've got a mortgage, offset mortgages are quite interesting.
Yes, I remember when they came in, they're very sexy.
I never had enough money in a pot put aside to make an offset mortgage look sensible.
So then what after that? You've bought properties, haven't you, in the past?
Yes, although always with someone else, in a couple.
Yeah.
They've worked out, as these things do.
Yeah, they're 10% a year, hidden cost of inflation.
Yeah. But, I think we've discussed this, but I'm not owning at the moment. I'm not interested in buying in this market.
No.
I think it's a bit weird out there. But also, I don't really feel attached to property at the moment. And part of it is about knowing where you want to live and where you want to stick, because sometimes you've got to stay there for a while to make it a worthwhile investment.
Yeah. And I only want to buy in Greece at the moment because property market, as you say, is weird here and at very high top. So, but there's no point in buying in Greece because it never goes up.
So you have to buy for a different reason,
yes.
Not as an investment.
Yeah. Owning a bit of paradise. That's my reason.
So the main reason for me to own a place at the moment would be to lower my monthly outgoings. But also, having owned a few properties, I'm also very aware of the amount of extra costs that come along.
Yes.
And I'm not a huge fan at the moment of unexpected costs in this world we're in at the moment. So
no, absolutely. And yeah, I've owned property. I've made money with property. In fact, up until a certain point, the only big money I'd made was in property. Mm-hmm. Businesses came and went. Pensions hadn't even appeared on the horizon. Certainly not payouts. And I don't think I've got much else. So I think I've consolidated 2 or 3 teeny tiny pensions into a SIPP, which I'm now managing myself. But you've got some interesting alternative investments on the go, haven't you?
Yeah, so I like, I went through a big thing of not liking the big banks and not trusting them and things like that. So when I always track challenger banks and alternative finance, looking for more interesting ways to either borrow or lend money. Mm-hmm. So funnily enough, I've for years I've lent on a peer-to-peer platform called Zopa, where we lend money to other people and they just handle all the admin and the credit control and credit rating and so on. So, and it's quite a nice interesting way of spreading your risk, because you might invest £1,000 but only lend £10 to each individual person.
Yeah.
And the overall interest rates are really quite high, but you are likely to lose some pots as people don't make their repayments. So you're looking for like an overall good score, as it were, with that. But I've been on it long enough that I've made consistently about 7% a year, while helping other people,
which is
excluding
really nice.
The profits from going to banks.
Yeah.
So I feel like doubly good about that.
Yeah, the rebel in you that likes the non-banking bit. Have you ever thought about borrowing from them yourself?
Well, do you know what? Until recently, I wasn't credit worthy enough.
Oh, really? Oh my God.
So it's really odd being a lender on something. It's part of the self-employed stuff, but it's odd being a lender on something that you couldn't borrow from. And yet I've been on it for years.
Was that educational for you, learning what investors look for?
No, I knew about that anyway. Years of, it's got to the point now where I don't really borrow money to do stuff. No. So I have almost no credit history, which then makes you a bad bet for other reasons.
Yes, it does. Yes. I would never pay off any credit card 100% because they'll just take it away from you, especially in this day and age, because they're looking to reduce risk, aren't they? That's their primary function, really, is to get their money back and reduce risk. What? So it was Zopa, Z-O-P-A.
Yeah, that's the one. I mean, there's others like it as well. There's one called Rate Setter. Those two are like people to people. Then there's some which is lend money to businesses. One I saw when it first came out was Funding Circle. That's quite an interesting.
I remember them, yeah.
So if you want to lend your money to businesses, that's quite an interesting one. I think that's a bit riskier, to be fair. That's just my opinion of it. Also, because
startups.
One of my clients actually once borrowed money on Funding Circle, and then he went bust and didn't repay any of the money. So I've got like a practical experience.
Yeah, from the other side.
From the other side, but without actually being hurt myself by it.
A cautionary tale.
Yeah.
And what's that one I give? I lend to entrepreneurs around the world, largely to women raising chickens. What's it called?
Kiva.
Kiva, that's it. I've got a little team going on Kiva, and I find that I use it psychologically when I'm feeling skint. I donate a bit extra to Kiva and lend it out, and that makes me feel all abundant. So it puts me in a better sort of energetic frame to go and actually make money myself.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because it's much the same idea as Zopa and Funding Circle, but for good causes, I guess. Yeah, no, and they're vetted by interesting local partners in developing countries around the world.
Yeah,
for the most part. Although some of it gets lent off to poor people in America and stuff.
Yeah, you can choose who you lend to. I tend to lend to women. I tend to lend to women who are doing agricultural things, that are not sort of food based, retail if it's clothes and stuff like that. Stuff I just want to help women who would traditionally find it harder to get loans. Yeah. And you don't get anything back from that, though. That's purely a charity thing. But I get a lot back psychologically from doing that.
Here's the thing. I think you do potentially get money back as an investment, but both you and I treat it as a donation, don't we? So we're just putting money in.
Possibly. When it comes back, I re-lend it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you're getting a return, aren't you?
Yeah, I suppose so. Not a profit, though. And then, of course, are we up to the big one yet? Have we covered all the other options apart from...
So we've got property. Are there any traditional finance we should mention?
I've had an experience when I was pregnant with Nelson, and I was home, and my husband was made redundant. I said to him, "Have you got anything we can sell?" And he said, "Well, I don't know. There's something upstairs. Let me go and have a look." He came back down with a little box that had a load of shared certificates in it that his auntie had left him when they were worth about £7,000, I think. And they'd gone up, and I checked them all. I just read some books on share investing. The Armchair Investor by Bernice Cohen, very good book. She used to write a column in a newspaper. And The Zulu Principle by Jim Slater. And so I tracked down what all these shares are worth, and they're worth nearly £50,000. So that opened my eyes to how, because I sort of vaguely knew about share investing because I read a book all about set in the 20s, Map and Lucia. You wouldn't know it. It's very twee, but it was about this couple. Well, they weren't a couple. He was gay, and they were just best friends. And they lived in the 20s and 30s in a little village. I think it was based in Rye in Sussex, and they lived on the interest from they lived on the dividends from their investments, and that was quite common in those days. When they talk about Darcy in Pride and Prejudice, a lot of people who were very wealthy. He had £10,000 a year, which meant that he had an income from his property, his farm, his share investments, etc., that totaled £10,000 a year, which in those days was a massive fortune. And so I sort of was vaguely peripherally aware of the stock market, but I didn't really know what it actually meant. But finding those shares that Irving had and then diving into what it all meant and which ones we should sell, which ones we should keep, which ones we should buy. Did quite well on Ted Baker shares at that time because we were all wearing Ted Baker shirts all the time. We were probably single-handedly supporting the share price. And so I just was gradually, by the time I was in my 30s, really getting interested in all the different types of investment.
Thanks for reminding me, because I'd forgotten the other first investment, which was when I was working for that pensions company. They had a staff share scheme that you could contribute to from your wage as well, which I did do. And it didn't vest till like 2 years after I'd left. So I'd kind of forgotten about it. But then that's when I got into day trading, because I had a bunch of shares. And I thought, all right, well, what can I do with these shares? And those shares for that particular company didn't really strove much. So there wasn't much volatility. So I did a bit of research, and I was a value-based investor, if you know what that is.
Yes, I do, yes.
Yeah, and so and also looking at a few trends and things. And I found this little-known oil company that looked like it had, pricing-wise, was worth more than its current assets. And obviously it might find some more at some point. So I stuck it all in there, and then I had to wait a few months. And then
What was it called, remember?
Yeah, Premier Oil.
Yeah, never heard of it, yeah.
But this is quite a few years back. And then it did very well. Thank you very much. But what I found was I was also running my business at the time, and you have to put time and energy into either part.
Yeah.
So for day trading and share trading, you need to be doing quite a lot of research if you want to do it well.
Yeah. Or keeping up with other people's research.
Yeah, which is an interesting thing if we take it up to date with the share trading platform I use now, eToro.
Yeah.
Their big thing is social, which is basically you can copy other people on the platform and just copy their investments and their trades.
Yeah, follow their portfolios, yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting. So if you think they're going to do enough research, then you can just click and copy.
The thing I feel, I know it's really weird, isn't it, the eToro? I mean, I did buy some shares on it a while ago, but I've just sold them all because they weren't doing as well as something else I wanted to buy. But the thought of owning a bit of a share worries me. The fact that you aren't actually, because you're buying, you know, you're not actually holding the certificates, and it's not held in your name, is it? That's how they're able to crowdfund buying. Well,
it's proxy buying, isn't it? Really.
What does that mean?
So someone else is owning it, but you own a share of it. So it's a bit like, I think of it more as if I own shares in a bank, I own shares in all the things they've lent out. Yeah. So although I don't directly have a certificate in or a contract with a particular person that's been lent money by that bank, I still got a share in the bank. So it's just it's like a middleman in the middle.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think Zopa's much the same. They have the contract direct with their customers, but they have a contract with me about what happens to my money.
Yeah.
So, and the eToro is the same.
Yeah.
I quite like being able to buy a bit of a share.
Oh, absolutely. But I find it a bit mysterious. So when I first got on there, I was able to buy shares in the silver market, which is interesting because there isn't sort of one thing that's the silver market. And then about a month later, I came back and I couldn't buy any more. It was just closed off completely. Which, you know, you needed something like $2,000 to buy, where silver's actually only $24 an ounce. So why, you know, I couldn't really understand what was going on eToro, because it seemed to change all the time, and I found it quite mysterious.
Well, I think maybe it was an exchange traded fund or something, you know, because they have some different ways on there that you can access markets that aren't that easy to access normally. Yeah.
Well, anyway, we won't go into too much detail on that one. So and Ali's making a good point here. You don't need to know how stuff is going to work to invest in it or to buy it. She said, for example, I don't know how hairdryer works, stop me using it. Well, Ali, it's really weird this, because I don't know how planes work and I get on them, but I had to find out how they work to be able to get on them. So so I do have to have some degree of, I don't feel, and that's why I wasn't able to use Sage accounting systems and things like that, because I couldn't see the workings behind the scenes, so I didn't trust the answers they were giving me. And if it looked wrong, I couldn't figure out why it had gone wrong. So I think there's quite a lot.
So when you move into a house, do you have to lift up the carpet and see how the floor's put together before you tread on the floor?
No, that's a silly example, isn't it? We all know how floors work. Or do we on a quantum physics level? Exactly. So then well, I'll tell you how I first heard about alternative investments like Bitcoin. When I got this 27 grand, which reduced to 719 by the time I got to Greece, because of the tax, I'll never forget that. I had vaguely heard about Bitcoin because my brother-in-law had been mining it. And you remember when that thing went around where we all shared our computers in the search for extraterrestrial life? Yeah. So I'd done that, and then I'd heard he was I think we were talking about that, and he said, "Oh, I'm mining Bitcoin or doing something." I didn't really take it in at all. And then he carried. I think he carried on doing that for a while, and then stopped because he started building his business. And he's never answered the question how many he's actually got. It's interesting. But then I went to Greece, and I could have, at that point, I've done the sums, I could have put my 19 grand into Bitcoin at $600 a pop, and I would be worth now 600,000, because it went up and then it came down, and it went up again and it came down again. But I didn't really get that interested in it until a friend of mine, Andy, who's the big property investor, and who also then went into internet marketing and affiliate marketing and became very good at that, who is obviously super bright. He started investigating cryptocurrencies generally, and he got very excited about Bitcoin, and he wrote a mini book about it, and he emailed it to me. And I remember it was November 2017, and it was on the way up. And I came home for Christmas, and I managed to convince some of my nephews and nieces to buy some over Christmas lunch, when it was absolutely at the peak, 17k. And but one, we know they've largely kept them, so they'll be all right one day. But I really got interested in it then, and that's when I started. I put $500 in and started learning to trade, because I'd always wanted to learn how to trade stocks and shares, but I always found that it was too difficult because I didn't have a big enough pot of reserve. Because you have to, your trades you make are were dependent on how much a pot you had, wasn't it?
Yeah, basically. But also, you need a big enough pot of money to make it worthwhile to cover the fees of trading and the spread and the cost between the buy and sell price.
Yeah, but I joined a trading group, charting guys on YouTube, and gradually, by watching his little videos every day, he does little videos on trading, I started to pick up some of the terminology. I'm very much someone who wants to do as well as watch. Mm-hmm. So with $500, I was earning, if I had a 1% day, I was, what's that, $50 or $5? I'm not very good with zeros. And I finally managed to get a strategy together where I was winning more often than losing. And then, of course, got some money together and really went big into Bitcoin and gold and silver because of the financial situation now. So when did you first hear about it?
Bitcoin, but probably about the same time you first heard about it, because I was running a technology company, so you keep an eye on these things. Yeah, there's a bit of buzz about it. If I remember correctly, I did a bit of Bitcoin mining and then completely lost whatever Bitcoin had done.
Oh my god!
It wasn't the main priority, but I know it was a fraction of one, because even at that point there were plenty of people doing it,
and it was getting more expensive with the electricity, presumably.
Yeah, well, I didn't even do it for long, but just to test it out and feel like what was it going to be like. Yeah. So,
and interestingly, I missed a bit. The thing I got really interested in was Second Life money. I remember, we had my sister and I had an island, and I was built apartments, and we were renting apartments out in Second Life, and we were making, and I was trying to trade what are they called, lindens.
Yeah.
And apparently if Second Life was a country, it'd be like one 4th or 14th. So there was a 4 involved. It'll be in the top 20 richest countries in the world.
Back when it was doing well, yes.
Yeah, well, is it not doing so well now?
Well, how many people do you know who use it now?
Well, yeah, perhaps there's younger people. I don't know. So did you, because that was the earliest cryptocurrencies, it sort of sprung out of the gaming world, didn't it?
We like to learn from gaming, so yeah.
Yeah. And are you invested in any others? Are you sort of on the other side of things? The Ethereum side of things.
I mean, I like Ethereum because I like Bitcoin as a store of value, mm-hmm. but I like investing in Ethereum because it's the oil of the crypto world that makes lots of the other crypto work. So the logic there is it has some value for a different reason.
Yes.
And in fact, the reason I didn't invest in Bitcoin originally was because the transaction times, I realized it would be difficult to do a lot with it. It was only going to be a store of value. Whereas Ethereum, because it took a little while for the next ones to come out, But things like Ethereum are actually designed to be scalable and run millions or billions of transactions, which is what you need for a whole world.
Yeah. It's still faster than getting real money sent, though, isn't it? I mean, I've got some money coming from America, and it's taking 3 working days, which I know is just happening because they're using that time to earn money on my money while it's coming through. It could be sent instantly.
I've got the same from Turkey right now.
Yeah.
They're like, we spent the money. That was yesterday. I haven't seen it yet.
Madness, isn't it? Well, it's the banks, isn't it, getting in the way? Whereas the thing, I mean, I'm getting more and more enamored of Bitcoin as a philosophical concept. The longer I go on, because it's unfiddleable with, it's unconfiscatable unless they torture you for your key. They, whoever was trying to extract
the nameless they.
The nameless they. Yes. But I love the fact that it's sprung from one genius mind, or possibly a collaboration that they've never been identified. There's a mystery to it. There's a mathematical elegance to it. There's an incorruptibility to it. I find it appeals to all my sense of fair play and democracy, in that anyone can own it, even if you live in a country that doesn't want you to own anything. And that you can send it across the world instantly. I mean, quite large sums of money just take, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Well, wasn't there something a few days ago? Someone sent like $10 billion worth of Bitcoin and it cost £3.89 or something.
Yeah, that's right. The biggest ever Bitcoin transfer. It was amazing. And then now, of course, you've got all these big companies, 6, 8, 10 big companies storing their cash reserves in it because they feel it's going to be an effective hedge against inflation.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the real reason to look at alternative investments, isn't it? So
yeah,
there's just not enough interest to be made in the rest of the world at the moment. In most,
no interest to be made anywhere, is there? They're going to negative interest on some banks.
Yeah. So it's difficult to beat inflation unless you keep looking further and further afield, which is risky, of course.
Yeah.
But it's because there's so much money floating around. There's a really interesting thing with you probably know this, with tracker funds, index tracker funds, which now have more money invested in the stock market indices than people who are just choosing their investments.
I know.
There's no quality control on more than half the money in it.
And there's bigger implications. If anyone's watching this, they want to learn more about this stuff, go and watch George Gammon on YouTube. I absolutely love George. He breaks down really complex concepts into 3 simple steps. And he does whiteboard pictures, and I'm such a visual person. I need a picture to be able to learn. I find it very difficult unless I'm reading and looking at pictures to take a concept in. Mm-hmm. If someone's just talking at me, which is why I did terribly at school, I think, because people are just talking at you. Unless they're actively drawing on the blackboard, I wasn't interested. So George Gammon's just the man. He just breaks all this stuff down into 3 whiteboards, which I absolutely love. So
if we captured all the alternative finance here, so we're talking about cryptocurrencies.
I think Charlie would kill us if we don't talk about the DeFi thing, which seems to be. I thought initially it was like the whole world of alternative coins. Say 2017 when Bitcoin was going up so much attention was being paid, and all these shit coins sprang up. Yeah. I thought DeFi was like that initially, but Charlie's doing a good job of convincing me that it's a world of alternative financial products that are run in a decentralized basis. So they're not run by banks and they're not run by governments. They're collaboratively run.
Yeah, I think the essence of them is it's normal banking finance products run in the decentralized blockchain world, which means there's more trust, or it's trustless.
You don't need to trust it.
Yeah, but also it means it's a global market, so it should, in essence, do a lot better than any individual country's financial products. Yeah, and a lot of these things are about lending your money in crypto form to other people who need it and work with it. So it's like building the same financial infrastructure but on a decentralized blockchain. Yeah. With a bigger market. So I mean, I see bits of it like I invest in Zopa. This is the early days of the same thing happening in the blockchain world. Very interesting.
I'm going to trust you to keep me up to date on this, Pete, because my brain just can't take any more in at the moment. I've got
No, trust Charlie. He's way more au fait with it than I
yeah,
am.
no, Charlie obviously is really au fait with it. What so are you, when you lend your Bitcoin, for example, to say BlockFi? I'm quite interested in BlockFi because it's a company that is invested in by Anthony Pompliano, and I think he's one of the good guys. And Raoul Pal's the other one I really like, apart from George Gammon. If I lent my Bitcoins to BlockFi and they would then pay me up to 8% interest, it's paid monthly, but it somehow tops up to 8%, which doesn't quite add up to me. Would I still own it? Yes, I think I would, wouldn't I?
You would if you just lend.
How would they use it if I'm still owning it? What's the benefit to them? That's the other thing I'd like to know. What does the other party getting out of it?
Well, they'd be taking a cut, won't they? It's pretty simple. Of the interest.
Yeah. Oh, the interest on what? Are they lending out my Bitcoin even though I'm still the owner of it? How do they do that? And what do they? How does it work?
It's a bit like with a bank. A bank can lend out like 10 times what they've got in.
10 times what they've got in savings. That's right.
Yeah, or a random figure. It depends on the country. Yeah, so you can re-lend it many times. That's the essence of that. It's not quite the same in blockchain yet because of the trust. Some of these, they'll be lending up to 50% of whatever they've got staked. So if there's like $1 billion of Bitcoin staked, they'll be lending up to 500 million. Yeah, because of the volatility of the value of Bitcoin, for instance.
How much? I mean, I'll probably do say if I'm asking awkward questions that you don't know the answer to yet. how much risk is there in me staking my Bitcoin and then the company, say BlockFi, lending on it? Actually, that's one of the other things they do. They lend in US dollars against your Bitcoin collateral.
So I would say it's much the same risk as I have in SOPA, which is it's about their understanding of credit risk of the people they're lending to. Okay, but what's interesting about DeFi at the moment, to a certain extent, is that a lot of it is about helping people transact in different cryptocurrencies. So I might lend my Bitcoin and then borrow back some Ether for a transaction I want to do that transaction, and then buy my Bitcoin back. So quite a lot of the people at the moment are just borrowing money to the equivalent value of what they already own in another product without having to transfer between different coins. But that's quite a limited market compared to.
You just said you'd have to borrow your Bitcoin back, which means you lose ownership of it when you stake it.
Well, it's more like you repay the debt and then they unstake and you get your Bitcoin back. Yeah, so it's basically collateral.
I still don't understand it, so I need to delve a little bit deeper into how it all works, because unless I understood it, I wouldn't be able to do it.
I still feel it's one of these classic, your capital is at risk rather than just the interest is at risk. Yeah, there's a chance that stuff's not going to work.
They're not having my Bitcoin then. they can whistle for it.
Yeah. So and also if once it's staked, you can't trade it, things like that. So
yes. But I've sort of decided now I need to cut back the trading, because I'm not convinced that I'm making as much from the trading as I would just holding on to it and letting it go up. I think, until I can work out a way to work out my trading profits, if any, I've only actually just gone into profit because, anyway, long story. But I need a way of better keeping track of my transactions. And until I do that, then I'm going to stop trading, because I think, you need to be able to keep a very close eye on whether you're trading too much and eating up the profit that would have happened if it was just sat and ridden it up anyway.
That comparison. Yeah. It's an interesting one.
I'm going to ask you after this call how you kept track of your day trading. So
I didn't do that many trades. I still don't. I just do a few that I think this is a good place to buy and this is a good place to sell, and then I have to do some waiting.
Yeah. I'll show you how I'm doing it, and you can tell if it's a good thing. Because as you can tell, Pete's much better at maths than I am.
So stop me making mistakes, though.
So going forward, what do we think we'll be investing in the future?
Well, for me, it's always about having a range, because you see all sorts of things suddenly come a cropper. Like a a pandemic can affect the world, and then industries you thought were rock solid can dissipate. You know, I'm glad I don't particularly have any shares in the airline industry, for instance.
Yeah, old Warren Buffett saw that one coming, didn't he? Straight out the airlines into. Well, in fact, I don't know if he did, because he just bought them in February, didn't he? And then sold them in March. I think he got out quick into Barrick Gold. That tells you a lot.
Well, that's only gone down since then, really.
Yes, so. I know. Yes. Cool. Okay, so we think we're probably going to invest in property in the future. We're very keen on precious metals. We're keen on. Have you got any mining stocks? I've got all my SIP in mining stocks.
And only one actually at the moment.
Okay.
But I'm not, because basically my shares are in my pension. That's actually in a fairly high risk fund, which I like, which is a smaller companies fund.
Yeah.
So rather than investing in the stock market where everyone else is looking at, it's about finding potentially good companies before that point.
I think my remember my savings where I invested £25 a month for 2 years. I think that was in a global smaller companies fund, high risk.
Yeah, so it's only a long term. That's just, you wouldn't do that for just a year.
Yeah.
But
and we continue to invest in our businesses, don't we? I mean, I've just paid for a training course, so that's an investment. I've paid for a lifetime membership and training from one of the people I consider to be the best at paid advertising in the world. So that we continue to invest in our businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And a range of stuff. So I've got lots of money. I've got some money in Zopa. I've got some money in pensions, trading, investing in shares, and I'm actively trading crypto coins, cryptocurrency and blockchain.
Yeah.
I think that's the key ones.
Yeah, diversity. We like diversity.
And I'm keeping an eye on DeFi, and when it, I won't be a super early adopter, but I'll be hanging around waiting for it, because they're starting to add some elements of it to some of the major platforms. So once there's someone else doing a lot more due diligence on it, so I don't have to.
Yeah.
Then I'll be happy.
Yeah. DeFi standing for decentralized finance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we got Charlie on the case anyway, so Charlie's partner's on the lines today. Mm-hmm. So tell him
there's probably more money to be made in it now, but I'm unless I've got time to spend looking into it, I'm risk averse on that sort of thing.
Yeah. I want to understand it more. I really think I don't want to miss. I don't want to miss the next Bitcoin. And I know there'll never be another Bitcoin, but I don't want to miss the next thing just because I'm ignorant.
Yeah, well, it probably is DeFi, but it's about finding the right bit of it.
I like some of them because they're very volatile. I mean, they can go up from sort of 14 or 15 to 40 in one afternoon, So I love the volatility, which is great for trading, but you have to be really on the ball with your stop losses, don't you?
Whereas I'm more interested in finding the right DeFi where you stake some money and it's lent out at a really high rate of return.
Yeah.
To the people who are trading it, probably.
Yes. Cool. Okay, so I think we're coming to the end now. What are you looking forward to this week?
This week I've got a bunch more of interviews to do with speakers and sponsors. I've got to finish doing a couple of the quotes I was talking about, running a workshop tomorrow, or two, three, a few. And then actually come Monday, I'm attending a really nice conference online called Kai Play, which I went to in person last year in Barcelona. This year it's in Canada, so the time zone issue is a bit of a faff. But so there was some really great talks on my subject, gamification, at it last year. So I'm hoping for more of the same this year. So that'll keep me really busy the first 3 days of next week. Actually, my spare hours will be attending a conference. Right.
And anything planned on the camper van front?
I know not at the moment. This weekend I'm with my daughter. We've got to work out what we can do Halloween-wise that doesn't spread coughs and diseases.
Coughs and diseases. Very nicely put. Oh yeah, see, all of that passes me by now. I've got grown-up children. I mean, Phoebe's, I think, getting dressed up to go to the pub or something, but I won't be doing anything like that. But
what will you be up to?
Well, I'm going to dig into this new thing. It's I've just run a bunch of Facebook ads we're still running Facebook ads for our podcast. which is going quite well, costing hardly anything at all to get us in front of lots of people. And then I might try a different one to get page likes, because I think when we go live, then we'll see more people following and watching. But I also want to now dig into this training course that I'm invested in to see if I could have been doing it better. But I have filled up my next 5-day challenge, which isn't for another couple of weeks yet.
Oh, fantastic.
Well, you filled it up. I've got a lot, as many people as I would like in it. And the ads ran seamlessly. No Facebook issues at all, which is rather disconcerting. Yeah, exactly. So hopefully I won't upset the Facebook gods before then, and we can, it'll be a thing I can run regularly every quarter. So I'm sure social stuff will come along. I tend to work on a very ad hoc basis on my social life.
I think that makes sense at the moment as well.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know what's going to happen next, do you? Brilliant. Well, great to talk to you as always. And I hope if anyone's got any questions, do come over to the Poke It Podcast private group on Facebook and join us there, completely free of charge, and just request to join and we'll let you in. And
tell us if we're missing any alternative investments, like, I don't know, wine or art or who knows.
We invest in wine, but unfortunately we don't keep it, do we?
I've got a delivery due, actually, at some point.
Yeah, gotta go. Naked's on the way. Brilliant. All right, Pete, see you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
You're listening to the Poke It Podcast with Pete Jenkins and Nicola Cairncross. You can find me at gamificationplus.uk and Nicola at clicksandleads.com.